The families of Russian troops serving in the invasion of Ukraine are trying to convince the Kremlin to bring their loved ones back from the front. But the protests are risky in a country where even a blank piece of paper can put you in prison.
Dear Vladimir Vladimirovich, we are waiting for your help.
Relatives of Russian men fighting in Ukraine have a message for President Vladimir Putin. This manifesto demands that the soldiers be released after a year of service, and they've threatened nationwide protests if that doesn't happen.
Unfortunately, most of the relatives of men who are called up are only protesting the conditions of their service. They're not opposing the war or the mobilization itself. Such protests, if there are any, are insignificant in number and quickly suppressed.
In Moscow, the loved ones of men who've been sent to the front hold up placards calling for their return. Although the rally was not explicitly against mobilization, it wasn't long until the police arrived and the posters had to be put away.
If you speak up, you'll be put in jail. Many people realize this, of course, and they fear it. They don't believe in their own strength, so there is no mass participation. But despite this, I'm sure that many wives would like their husbands to come back.
Everyone is tired of the war, both the men on the front and their partners, says military analyst Yan Medvedev. According to his data, more than half of the Russian forces currently in Ukraine were called up as part of Russia's mobilization, and even breaks from the fighting are hard to come by.
We see a lot of complaints that many soldiers are not approved to go on vacation. They're told a piece of paper is missing, the commander didn't sign it, and all of these other excuses. You can understand why. There's no full-fledged rotation. And if you let a large number of soldiers leave, who will fight?
Russian law prevents mobilized men from leaving the front. Human rights groups point out there are only 3 ways to be discharged: serious injury, being sent to prison for absence without leave, or reaching the age limit of 65.
In the decree on mobilization, there is no limit on how long mobilized men will have to fight, and there's also no limit in the law on mobilization. So according to Russian law, mobilized men are drafted indefinitely.
Loved ones of the soldiers plan more protests across the country. Authorities have already banned some of them. Meanwhile, legislators are considering amending the mobilization law. One proposal would toughen penalties for evading mobilization.
Now let's bring in DW's Russia analyst Konstantin Egert on this. Konstantin, does Russia have a problem finding soldiers for its war against Ukraine?
Well, to answer to your question, I have to say that Putin has a problem with something that is, for some reason, still called presidential elections in Russia, i.e. The ceremony, the process through which we will have to go in March to stay in the Kremlin. And before that, he really doesn't want to rock the boat. He doesn't want to have another mobilization because this does irritate people. And on the other hand, he's gradually coming to a situation in which there are not many people left, or at least there are much fewer people left to call up in provincial Russia. And he has to deal, if he wants mobilization, with Russia's, 20-something large cities, 1 million or more. And there the population is better educated, better informed, and usually more politicized. So the problem for Putin is that he definitely wants more soldiers, but he doesn't want to destabilize the political situation in the run-up to March next year.
Now, what does it do to soldiers' morale if the only official way back home is a serious injury or reaching retirement age?
Well, as a former officer, I can tell you it doesn't work well for your morale, of course. But what I think is important here is that when these people were called up, a lot of them were called up, the presumption was that they will be rotated. And this is essentially, as far as I understand, what most of those wives are demanding. They say, well, a year is enough. They should be replaced by someone else. But there is not enough of those someone else's. to replace them. So that creates a situation in which these people are literally, as it was in the piece before we started talking. This is an indefinite clause. It's a bit like a feudal army in which you're called up for 25 years, something like that. So, of course, people are demanding that their husbands be released from duty and someone else takes their place.
Now, has the Russian public come to terms with the war, or just people are just too afraid to take to the streets?
Oh, I think the majority of the Russian public, and most opinion polls are unreliable, as they are in Russia, show, is trying to be indifferent to it, trying to basically shut the door on the war and pretend it's not happening. This is actually what helped Putin to wage this war for quite a long time. And I suppose that we are not going to see a big shift in this situation unless there are such massive casualties on the front that the current protests against prolonged mobilization turn into a full-fledged anti-war, pro-peace protest. I don't think it's happening anytime soon.
DW Russia analyst Konstantin Egger there reporting. Thank you very much, Konstantin.
Thank you.